Well, I mean, just overall, I mean, what I see is an offense that's completely broken at this point. And, look, it's 9 games into the season. The season is not over. The bye week's coming. They could get this thing back together somehow in some sort of form. I am not ruling that out, despite even what we saw in the summer. I never buried this offense and say they're going to be totally inept. I figured they would get it together at some point. It hasn't happened here. And really, it's only happened in 2 games. And of course, the Bailey Zappi zealots out there want to say like, well, this offense worked when Bailey was out there. And that's a whole different discussion where people don't want to use context. But just the short answer to that is, okay, fine. It worked well against the Browns and the Lions. We won't talk about their defenses or anything like that. How'd it look in the second half against the Bears? Okay. Which, I mean, if you took Bailey Zappi outside of 2 plays that they made, wide open guy and a jump ball, how did it look against the Bears? And did it look any different than the offense, how the offenses looked the past 2 games? Not really. And so, to me, this all starts with the offensive line. The offensive line is a complete disaster at this point. This past week, even though it was a little bit better, and some of this might have been dictated by score in the second half, but they gave up, again, pressure was 38%. That's a lot. I mean, it's not the 48% it's been, but that's still a lot for a pocket passer. Their stuff percentage in the running game, 45% this week. I mean, that's just... My word. It's atrocious. So even before you get into the quarterback, and I know people love to talk about the quarterback and they think that just because they had Tom Brady here that you can snap a finger and a good quarterback's going to make everything better. It's just not the way it works for the other 31 teams. When you don't have the greatest quarterback of all time. I'm sorry to break it to you, but that's not how it works. And you need everything to work when you don't have Tom Brady, or at least, some of it. They can't block the run, which we figured they would be able to do coming into this year. They can't pass block. Now they're going in and out with personnel. Started Yadni Kajus. They must listen to the podcast because I was yelling last week about if he can't start at right tackle now, what's he doing on this roster? So now he's out here starting, and he was okay. I thought that I'm just looking at my stats. I thought that he did a good job in the running game. A little bit of a tough time in the pass protection, but that puts him in with everybody else. Cole Strange gets benched in this game for the second straight game. Now they're putting Isaiah Wynn at guard, and of course they didn't have David Andrews, so that hurts. But any good offense, you need a foundation. And the foundation of any offense is the offensive line. I know people love to ignore it. They love to make fun of me for concentrating on the offensive line. But when an offense goes bad, it's usually because the offensive line is bad. And right now it's bad. Matt Patricia is the coach of that. That to me is job number 1. And even before we get into Mac Jones and his issues, they got to figure out a way to block things better and in the running game, pass protection, start there. Once you start there and are better there, then other things have a chance at working. Before you can get into the quarterbacks or the weapons, and I completely agree with you. I was going through some of my stats and I'm like, wait a minute. Did Kendrick Bourne played in this game? Did Nelson Aguilar played in this game? Lynn Bowden played in this game? I don't even remember them out there. And so, even before you get into that stuff, you have to talk about the offensive line. And right now, that unit has just done a complete nosedive from earlier this season.
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, it's just bad football up front. And you hope David Andrews comes back from the concussion with the bye week now and they settle it a little bit. Cole Strange has been a disaster without David Andrews. And first round pick, not ideal, right? So you don't want to be benching your first round pick in back-to-back weeks when you're in the middle of a football season. And that's where the Patriots are with Cole Strange. He's not been good enough. Simple as that. And, you look on the right side, it's been a problem. I'd say at least Causewue wasn't an absolute train wreck, which is an upgrade from what they've had. Maybe Win at guard is going to work out. Maybe that's what you think about. Maybe you move him to right guard and, Owenu to tackle if Causewue doesn't work out. But we should not be – here's the problem. Here's the problem, folks. These are the conversations that you should not be having in the middle of a season. You should not be trying to figure out your offensive line combinations and who is starting for you in front of who is supposed to be your franchise quarterback. And because you're having these conversations, you screwed up. As simple as that. And we've talked about it before. Patricia is just spread too thin. Offensive coordinator, offensive line coach, trying to learn how to be an OC. And some of, if not most of, his issues have to do with that. Like, I'm telling you from personal experience, I've had 2 full-time jobs here in Sacramento over the last year. And it's really difficult to do 2 full-time jobs, folks, because you're spread thin and, you can't always dedicate yourself to one job because you're looking at both jobs. So they have not put him in a position to succeed. The weapons. I honestly feel like when you walk in, because we'll get into Mac Jones very deeply here in a few minutes, but I feel like they walk into a game, Greg, and they say, okay, how can we make sure we get Ramondre Stevenson involved? Which is fine by me because Ramondre is the best player on this offense.
Yep.
But outside of that, it's like, what are you doing with the tight ends consistently to make them effective and impactful? What are you doing with Thornton? And you mentioned Bourne and Aguilar. What are you doing to give them some easy catches, to utilize their ability, their speed? What are you doing to get the athletic Jonnu Smith the football more off? Like, it's just, all right, and if I had to see them in the first quarter run on a first down under center into a heavy box, I was going to smash my television. Like, what are we? You're constantly at 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10, 2nd and 11 early in this game. Like, figure it out. Like, Bill Belichick, go to Patricia's. Like, stop with the in between the tackles run plays up the middle against, stacked boxes, Matt. It's not working, Matt. And finally, they throw a screen to Jonnu, and it kind of opened things up a little bit. Like, I don't know what their approach is, Greg, from week to week offensively.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And, before we get into Mac, this is what I'll say about the offense. And I'm watching it. And Dan Orlovsky had some interesting tweets. I hope he goes on TV and talks about this stuff, at some point, because I want to. I mean, he's an expert. I mean, he's played the position. He knows what it's like. He's been in game planning, and he's certainly critical. But, this is the overreaching thing with the offense is that, when Belichick named Matt Patricia and Joe Judge in charge of the offense, or, didn't name them, just kept them there, didn't give them titles or anything like that. I'm sure part of it. Yeah, I'm sure part of the thinking, and we heard this from some of the players, and also I think even Patricia, would say himself, like, his years as defensive coordinator give him a lot of insight into defenses and how to attack it. We heard stuff like that. I heard it from the fans, like, oh, this is going to give us an edge. He knows what defenses, how they're going to react to certain things and what gives them trouble and stuff like that. Okay, that's fine. That's all well and good. But the most important job for an offensive coordinator, and I've been spoiled watching some of the guys, whether it's in Green Bay with Mike McCarthy and his guys, or Josh McDaniels when he was here, and watching these guys. The most important thing it's not the stuff against the defense and figuring out what's going to, that's like 3rd, 4th, 5th down the list. The most important thing that an offensive coordinator has to do, a play caller has to do, is figure out, okay, where are my players? Where are my offensive players, and how do I get them the ball? How do I put them in position to succeed? What do I need to do to get my quarterback into a rhythm when obviously he's out of rhythm, or he's been beaten up, or there's been a lot of pressure? Like, how do I do that? Before you even get into the defense, you got to take care of your own guys. And to me, that's where the disconnect is. That, we've mentioned this before, that, that Matt Patricia doesn't have any idea how to help Mac Jones. That's the thing. It's like, I don't care what you see on the defense. How are you going to help your quarterback? Because if you can't help your quarterback, none of that stuff matters. I made a few good men reference a few weeks ago. I'll make another one here. It's the difference between paper law and trial law. Like, it's one thing to think about this stuff in meetings. It's another thing in the game, in the courtroom, to say, okay, that didn't work. So what are we going to do to put it back on track? He obviously has no idea how to do that, or else 9 weeks into the season, they wouldn't be here. And it's against any defense that's worth a salt, not the Lions, not the Browns, missing some of their best players, but against, some pretty good defenses with guys in the secondary who cover, like, the Jets aren't blowing any coverages. The Bears aren't blowing any coverages. And, this week the Colts are pretty good, with their, cover 3 zone. At least they have Gilmore and Kenny Moore out there. So you're not going to get a whole lot of busts. And Patricia just doesn't know how to get things on track.